Alright, welcome sir.
I just want to say, you guys are watching from home, shame on you. Shame!
Okay, so today we're going to be talking about particle systems. Completely different from what we've been doing before. Since we need to sort of build our environments now for the projects, this is a good topic to start with. So I think that it's important that you see a worked example or a working example, and then we can develop something. So I'm just going to walk you through what the particle system editor is about and what can we do with it and stuff like that. So maybe we're not going to be making a full-fledged example in this session, but at least you'll gain some experience with what's happening. Okay, so a good working particle system is can be found under the starter content. When we're first making the project, we can include the starter content. So under starter content, you'll have a folder called particles, and inside you'll have different particle systems. So I'm particularly interested in showing you the fire particle system. So if you open it. This should be the thing you see now. Okay. So basically, a particle system is just an emitter. It consists of something called an emitter. So the emitter is sort of emitting these particles. But what are particles? They're just like sprites. If you're familiar with what a sprite is in 2D graphics, is something that it's not really 3D. It gives you the feeling that it's 3D, but it's not. It's just because it's facing you all the time, so you think it's in 3D, but it's not. It's just images that are being emitted at a certain speed and at a certain rotation, and with some other variants that we're going to look at.
So the view
View? Press on the particle system itself. So yeah, so you can have in this tab here, it's called the emitters. So you can have many different emitters. So this particle system is not just fire being emitted. It has fire. It has sparks. As you can see, there are sparks that are that are flying around. And there's something called embers that are flying around as well from the smoke being, the smoke is lifting these embers. And there's smoke, it's not really clear, but you can see it. And there's some sort of distortion, but it's not also clear in this viewport. Maybe it will be clear in the game itself. Okay, so we can start by disabling all the other emitters and looking at a single emitter and see what's happening. So how you disable the other emitters is by pressing this click sign. So disable all of them and leave just the first one. Alright, so you can see that there's only the fire one remaining, only one of the fire emitters. Okay, so what's there under the fire emitter? There's something called the required field. Something about, okay, these things are run in a sort of stack structure. So it executes this, and then it executes this, and executes this. It works from up to down, okay? So that's the order of their execution. So required is something that is where we are basically setting the material and the basic information about the particle system or how it's going to behave. That's in the required section. So we can start looking at it now. Okay, So if you press on required, okay, you're gonna have in the details section below on the left lower corner, you're gonna have something called the material. So this is the material that the particle system is using. It's using something called a sprite sheet. So a sprite sheet is just, I'm gonna show you what the sprite sheet is. If you press on the material, if you press on the box here, it's gonna open up the material in the material editor. Are you guys following?
No. I closed all the other.
Okay, and then press on required,
Required, yeah.
and then you'll have the material part. Yeah, press on the material, you're gonna open the material section, material editor, I mean. And if you zoom in a bit, you're gonna see something called the particle sub-UV. Just drag it to the left to see the rest of the graph. Okay, and there's the particle sub-UV here. Okay, if you press on that node and then go in the details section, you'll have the texture. And then you can press on the texture and let's view what the texture is all about. So this is called the sprite sheet. It has many different instances of the fire, okay? Because they are like sub-images. We have a whole image that is divided into sub-images of these fires, okay? So what's happening is that the particle system is emitting these images at regular intervals, and we're going to look at that. And it's emitting every single one of these sub-images. So starting from, and they're indexed like an array. So from 0 to 35, because they're 6 by 6. So from 0 to 35, in 0 to 35, images. It's going to be running through them all. It's going to be looping through all these images and emitting them. So the combined behavior of this will give you the feel or the look of the fire. And we're going to see what happens if you just emit only one image of those. It's going to look like a jellyfish sort of thing. It's not really fire, it's just like a fire that is flying like a jellyfish. Alright, we're going to look at it. So, you don't really have to worry about the material right now. I was just showing you what's happening under the hood of that emitter. So you can close it. Okay, so if you go under spawn, there's the second thing that's called spawn under required. And that's like, this is where you specify certain properties of when the particles are emitted or when they spawn. Okay, so things like the rate of spawning and the scale at which they spawn first, and maybe the lifetime of these particles and things like that. There are other things where you can specify the lifetime of the particles. By what I mean by a lifetime is that each particle, when it's emitted, it will stay for a few seconds, for example, before it's completely removed. So the smoke will fly and then disappear after 2 seconds, for example, things like that. And the sparks as well. And usually the particles are emitted within a volume, so when they go out of the volume, they are not rendered anymore. So they are restricted by lifetime and the volume in which they are emitted. Okay, so if you go under rate, for example, in the details panel, okay, so maybe it's better to look at it using a graph. Just a second. Okay, so what have you guys done this? You see the distribution saying distribution float constant and then a constant here.
I can find the constant, I can find distribution float constant.
Okay, there's an arrow next to distribution that you can click on it. Okay, so what this means basically, and if you see the graph, how you can get the graph is by pressing the graph icon next to, there's a graph icon in any of the field that you want to see. Okay, so you'll just see a straight line. What this means is that the particles are being emitted at a rate of 5. I'm not really sure what the 5 is, like what's the unit of that 5, but if you increase it, they're going to be spawning at a faster rate. If you decrease it, it's going to be spawning at a slower rate and stuff like that. So, but you can have also a graph that is not constant like that. So it can have like varying degrees of spawning. So maybe it will be spawning at some time really quickly, and then it slows down random distribution if you want. But for now, it's just spawning at the same rate as you can see from the look of it. So you can also apply, like, there are different things that you can mess up with around in the details panel. So I haven't really worked with burst, but we can try it out. So it's like it's giving a burst of these emissions. You can mess around with these numbers. They're not like, it's all artistic at the end. So from what I understand, I haven't used it again before. So from what I understand is that this count variable here is just how many emitters, how many particles are being emitted in a burst sort of thing, as if you're taking pictures with the camera. So it's not just emitting one particle; it's emitting 14 particles in one. Yeah, the particle here is being represented by a picture, but the picture that is transparent in its background, it doesn't have any background. So you'll see the fire is just like as if it's fire, but it's just a normal picture. And what they do as well is that they have something called emissive. I think from you can recall from the material editor session that we had before, they will have these fires being emissive so that they're sort of glowing. It's not just a picture, they're glowing as well. So that will give you the feel that it's burning, They will have emissive color applied, but that's all work in the material section. Okay, so next is lifetime. If you press on lifetime, and then in the details section you'll have lifetime as well, and then again a distribution. Just a second. Okay, so the lifetime is, as it suggests, you'll have a minimum. So the minimum is, you can have it like between 0 and 1, or between any time variable, like length of time that you need. So it can be like maybe half a second, 1 second, stuff like that. So you decide on the minimum, the max amount of time that it's required to live. So here's, maybe it's living 1 second. the problem is this burst thing. We can eliminate it. I seem to be getting this wrong a bit. Okay, let me just do a quick search in the docs. So this is an important thing you should be doing because there are a lot of variables in this that no one will remember everything. So the documentation for the particle system is quite good. You can search for any term that you want. So I will show you how to do it so that you can do it as well when you're working. So basically we go for, you can use Google and then particle system, UE4 docs. So you get the particle system user guide. I'm just gonna go over it after the session and then I'll tell you what's the minimum value here instead of just wasting time over this. But from what we can see is if we set this to 0,
في سب فانكشن يعني في سب بارتكلز هذا لايف تايم يعني انا قصدي ان هو بيراندملي البيكتشرز دي بيديها اللايف تايم من الرينج ده من 0 to 7 to 1 ففي بارتكلز بيجيلها 0 فما بتظهرش عشان كده بيقطع شويه.
بالظبط. Okay, yeah, makes sense. بالظبط يعني some of them have بالظبط a minimum lifetime of 0.7 seconds, and others have a max of, so they will always have a max of 1 second or a minimum of 0.7. Sorry, just a long day. Okay, so next up is the sphere. The sphere is just, it's saying that the particles will be emitted in a volume that is in the shape of a sphere. So usually you'll have a cubic thing in which the particles are being emitted. But if you have a sphere volume, then it will be emitted in some sort of a sphere. Again, you'll have the same variables here, like a distribution and a constant. So here it's saying that if you see it in the details panel, you'll have a start radius. So the start radius is having a constant. Here it's set to 30, so that means that the particles are being spawned in a sphere of radius 30, so it can't be spawned at the center or a bit, along the diameter. So they're going to be spawned in anywhere inside the circle of radius 30.
Anywhere inside?
Yeah.
At the center?
No, it's not the center. But that's just the start radius. So where the being emitted is within the sphere. Okay, so that's simple. And then there are other options that you can explore, like velocity and stuff like that. But it's not really important. All you have to care about is that if you add a sphere module here, then you're requesting the particles to be spawned in a sphere sort of shape. It can be quite clear if we see it in embers, for example. Maybe it's not that clear in the fire part, so let's just turn off the fire and then turn on the embers. And let's see the sphere module of them. So, can you see it? If you increase the sphere module, then they will be starting inside a sphere of a bigger radius, for example. So let's increase it a bit. So you can see that the sphere is it's a bit larger now. You zoom in and zoom out a bit. They're sort of flying in some virtual sphere. Okay, so let's move on. We can go back to the fire if you want. Alright, let's do the fire. Right. So if you can see, there are two flames. Both are getting fire. This one is getting fire in some sort of a vertical direction. The other one is giving in a horizontal direction. So both of them together is giving this movement of fire in both directions. If you turn off one, you'll see that it's going out. Turn on the other, you'll see the other direction. So there is also something called the initial size. They're quite self-explanatory. In start size, you'll have also a maximum size and a minimum size, just like the things in the lifetime. So you have a max size for the particle or the image being emitted, and a minimum size for that image as well. We can mess up with the numbers and see what's going to happen. I think what's happening here is that it's scaling the image in the X, Y, and Z directions. So you have a maximum scale in the X and Y and Z directions with this amount. It's scaling, I guess. And you also have a minimum value. So always have a minimum and maximum. So you'll see this minimum and maximum in many things, like initial size, initial velocity. There will also be a minimum and maximum in it. Lifetime, things that can have varying things. If we look at, for example, initial velocity, again you have starting velocity and distribution, and then max and minimum. So max and minimum velocity in the X, Y, and Z directions. So the vector, so you're saying in what direction should it be moving faster? Okay, because this particle is being it's a 3D thing, so images are being spawned in all directions. Okay. All right. I think one interesting thing is this light module at the end. So with that, if you disable it, for example, one thing is that you can disable these modules by again pressing on the click sign, as if we're closing these emitters. So if you click on the light one, if you turn it off or on, it doesn't really show any results because it needs to have a surface below it. What the light does is it sort of creates light as if this particle effect is actually emitting light. It looks as if it's emitting light, but without this light module, it doesn't emit anything. It's just the material being emissive. But emissive materials do not emit light. They just look as if they're glowing, but they don't emit light on the environment. But with this light module, you'll have some light on the environment as well. It's just a quick hack, just to have some, like an approximation of light being emitted by this particle system. So if you place it in the level, for example, you shall see that this particle is. It might not be very clear in the lighting conditions of this starter map. So if you have a darker map, you will see the lights better. Or if you remove the skylight, for example, then you can see the particle lights better than that. Okay. Yeah, there's something also called the sub-image index. That's a very important module, and it's the thing controlling which images from the sprite sheet are being loaded or are being emitted at the moment. So if we see that, if we press on it, you have again a distribution and a constant curve, and then alright, so if you see the numbers, you have at 0, you have 0, and at 1, you have 35. What does that mean? If we look at the graph, let's load the graph first. So press on the graph icon next in the sub-image index module. If you zoom out a bit, or sorry, zoom in, you'll see this graph, this sort of graph. Starting at time 0, we're going to be loading the image, the sub-image in the sprite sheet number 0. And at the end of the lifetime, or at the end of 1 second, we're going to be loading the image number 35.
1 second.
1 second. So we're saying that we're going to be loading the 35 images in the interval of 1 second. And it's a linear graph, so that at second 0.1 or whatever, it will be loading this image. The next fraction of a second, it will be loading this image.
It doesn't depend on the frame rate بتاع الجيم نفسها.
لا. Yes. Here, you don't have to really care about the frame rate of the game, because I think the particle system is not. I mean, these calculations are not done with respect to the frame rate of the game. Like if the frame rate drops, then the whole thing will also slow down. So they're sort of. I'm not really sure how it's implemented underneath, but you don't really care about the frame rate here. Okay, so this is the basic idea. So it's a linear graph. You can have different interpolation graphs. So you can have something like that is going, like weird curve, but it will be loading images in random order. So like at 0.2, it will be loading image numbers 28, and then. You can have any sort of graph, but this is just loading the images in their respective order. So it's like looping all over the sprite sheet, loading all the images and emitting them. Okay. All right. Dynamic is just a module where you can send some variable data to the material editor, because you can have the material of the particle changes color, for example, based on the lifetime. So at 0.9 of my lifetime, or like half midway of my lifetime, I want my texture to change its color to red, for example. So I'll have to send some variable data to the material editor so that it changes these stuff. I don't really think we should like delve into that at the moment. So maybe like when we work on the project, we need to have some sort of variable varying. I mean, particle systems. We don't have to copy this. So I want to show you something. Maybe we want this fire to look as if it's coming from a magician, for example. So it will give like a blue fire, for example, not just this red-looking or realistic-looking fire. So we can change the color of the fire over lifetime. We can test that at the moment. So go for color over life. There's a module that says color over life. And the flame emitter that is active at the moment, okay? Okay. So if you keep expanding these drop-down menus, you'll have like, there are 2 points. You should have 2 points. You can add more. The points are just like at this time I want this color to be there. At this time I want this color to be there. So you can have so many different points at which the color is changing. But here it's only being done twice. We're just going to use the ones that are already available. So at time 0, we can start with a fire that is of the color, for example, blue.
I can't find anything there.
Okay, I went for color over life, and then I expanded this, so I have distribution. I expanded distribution, so I have a constant curve, and then I expanded that, I have points, and then I expanded the points. So just keep going down, okay? Now you have these 2 points, one being at 0 and one being at 1. So at 0 is saying when the particle is first emitted, okay? So we can play with the out value, which is basically the color here. We can pick a color, for example, blue. Or at this one, it's more of purple now. So it will start purple, and it will sort of go into a reddish value at 1. It's not really clear, but we can have it. Instead of at 1, we can do 0.4, for example. So it has like purple and red. We can mess around with the red too, so we can have some sort of yellow, for example. See, it's just like, you know, it's going to change the color over the lifetime, or over a certain amount of time, I mean. So you can have that, or you can have this sort of change also with the dynamic module. So maybe you want things to be done through code, like when the guy is a bit hurt, you want the particles to change their color in a certain way and stuff like that. There's a lot of things that can be done in the particle system. But this is just like, this will always work like that. You know, it's a very static approach to things. You can have a more modular approach. Okay. So you can start creating your own particles now. We can have an example if you want. I'm not sure how much time. Okay, we have like 15 minutes. So we can create a very basic particle system by using maybe a PNG image. You know, PNG images have transparency option, so you can just have the shape without the background. So you can get any image of the internet that doesn't have a background, and then you can use the shape in it. So maybe a star, or any sort of shape that you like, hearts, for example, anything. and then you can use these images to emit. So the images will be your particles here. Instead of fire, you can have any image that you want. So you either use a sprite sheet that will have so many images that you can load all of them, or you can have one image that will just have one shape. So you'll be loading only stars, or loading only hearts, or loading any sort of shape that you want. So you either use one image or use a sprite sheet that has many images in them. But when you use a sprite sheet, then you need the sub-image index module that loops all over these images. Okay. So, any question regarding that, or you're comfortable with it?
Comfortable with that. يعني الديستورشن ده
A distortion, I don't really see. Maybe you can test it by placing this particle effect in the level, and then you can see the distortion, but it's not clear here. I think you know what the distortion means is when you're looking through fire, for example, you will see things being wavy a bit. If there's a lot of fire, then you look at what's behind the fire, then it becomes wavy. So I think that's only done in the level. So if we have something behind the fire, then you will see the thing behind the fire being distorted. That's the effect here. But regarding the modules, okay, so again, they will be executed from top to down. And yeah, we can just make a very simple particle system so that you can see how it's done from scratch, like in 10 minutes. So let's just get a random image of the internet really quickly. So Google, let's say bird PNG, for example. Okay.
I get the bluebird or something.
That's bluebird.
Yeah, it's not sure.
This one?
Yeah.
Oh, these are huge images.
It doesn't really matter.
I think it matters. Fantastic. Alright, so let's just copy the image that we just got, but make sure it's a PNG image, okay? I'll just copy it into Unreal and place it here. I'll rename it as well, so random birds. And then I'll create a new particle system. So how you create one is just...
You have to turn it into material first.
Okay, right click and then create a material. It's the first option, because this is just a texture, so you want a material out of this texture. So to do it automatically for you, you can just right click and create material, and it will create a material with this texture applied. So random birds underscore amps for material. If you open it, you will just have the texture sample being applied to the base color. It's very simple. Very simple material. Okay, so alright. We can now create a particle system. So right click and then you'll have particle system. It's here because it's like quite frequently used, so they place it here. But you can also get it from they change the location of these things all the time. I just get it from here. Particle system. Alright, so let's name it random bird particle. Okay, so this is the starting shape. It doesn't have any images. It's sort of emitting weird shit. Okay, so let's apply an image to the required field, press on required, you'll see that the material it's using right now is just random. It's giving us this shape. So we can use our random bird material. Random bird material. Okay, so let us just compile. So you can't really see anything.
لايت
What?
اللي هو الماتيريال نفسها يعني الفيتشر نفسها لازم تجلو.
بالظبط. It's you either do the emissive thing because there is no light being shined on the material. How you do, you can change it to be unlit so that it's not affected by light anyway. It doesn't take light in the scene into its calculation. Okay. So you can just, as you said, you can plug it into the emissive. It's hilarious now. Okay, so the emissive thing. Oh.
You have to change the blend type.
What?
Blend type to translucent.
Yeah.
And then the opacity goes.
I'll do that. Okay, so the thing you said, the emissive color doesn't really work. I think just for previewing purposes, you need to set the lighting module to be unlit. So the shading model, if you press on the material node itself, you have something called the shading model there. If you select it to be unlit, then it will not take the light into consideration. So it will just be viewing it. What it was initially on, it was default lit. So we just change it to unlit so that we don't take light into consideration. Now you can, now we need to have only the bird and not the background of it. So like what Kareem suggested was the blend mode. So blend mode, if you set it to translucent, it will open something called opacity. If we bring it back to opaque, then opacity will not be there. It will just grayed out. So what opacity does is basically if it's set to 0, then it will be completely transparent. If it's set to 100%, it will be opaque. Okay. So if we use, we can use the alpha from here. So you'll only have the bird. You only have the bird now. Like you see the part for the back, it should have birds flying. Okay. Yeah, I don't know, it sort of went out of scope or something. Okay. So yeah, it's emitting birds. We can mess around with how they're being emitted by maybe changing the initial velocity. Not again. Okay, so initial velocity, we can do different velocities in different directions. So maybe favor the direction in the x-axis. So if we have it here, have birds sort of flying. we can do the minimum being the Z axis. So you can mess around in any way you want. You can also do the sphere thing, so you can, how you add modules is just by right-clicking here, and you'll have the different categories. Then you can pick up any module you want. So for the sphere, I think it's in location. Yes, here's the sphere. So you have like birds, being spawned in a sphere sort of thing. It's quite crappy, I know, but this is something you do in like 5 minutes. Okay, you can also have the color change, for example.
Is this how Assassin's Creed Unity does it?
I think so. It's quite bad if you see the fire animation, fire particles in Assassin's Creed Unity, especially in the first level. They're quite horrible.
I haven't even played the game.
No, you should play it. It's really bad, man. It's the same thing. They're using like fire images, they're just spawning fire. Okay, so we can change the color in this, I guess. Oh no, we need to play around with the color of the texture itself. So you will need some data to be sent to the material editor for that to happen. We can have more examples next time, but I think Kareem will be doing terrain after a little. So we can have more concrete examples next time, for example. I think we should also, like regarding the project thing, we should start creating an environment. So I think you now have like so many things that will help you create an environment. You can use the props that are in the starter content, for example, and you can get some like assets that are free. So there's a really cool website called the Free 3D Model. It's not perfect, but you're not going to be paying $50 for a barrel, for example. So you can just get it from here. So the Free 3D Model.
And there's the Unreal Marketplace. It has some free stuff.
It has some free stuff, but usually like more like plants and vegetation. But there's also the Infinity Blade package. It has a lot of assets as well, so rocks and buildings and all of this stuff, and swords as well. There's a package that has like 100 swords, for example. So a lot of free stuff. But this is a really good website. So if you search for anything, so as I said, a barrel. So you can get a barrel and then this old barrel, for example, and then put the fire particle effect on top of it. So like put some hobos next to it as well, like in the winter. You can build anything.
So you can build it and then add it.
Yeah, you
Can you show me an example?
Okay. So you need to be careful about the extension of these. So it says .mb. I'm not really sure what software works with that, but some other models will have fbx or .obj. You'll have the format here. So it says .3dx or fbx. But usually go for obj or fbx. But this one is MB. I'm not really sure what this megabyte thing is. And this one is good. This one is good too. It has OBJ in it. So you can get that. You'll just download it. But careful with this website because sometimes they take like models from actual games. So you can fall into copyright issues really easily.
Remember the my session?
Just a second. I have to go. Okay. So this is the model here. Okay. So there's the .fbx here. If you just drag it into Unreal, it would work. Come on. Maybe go into props and let's just place it here. Let's grab it. Okay, bring the FBX. Come on.
Just use your left hand to press on tab.
Okay. We'll have some FBX and board settings like is it a skeleton mesh? It's not a skeleton mesh. I'm not really sure why it's doing this. Maybe the guy who rigged it or created it had a skeleton on the file for some reason. Okay, import materials and import textures. These should be, of course, checked on. Import also. I have the oil drum here. Seriously.
What is this?
There's a scale problem. You'll have to probably go into 3D Studio Max and change it there.
Just bring it in and scale.
There's a problem with the texture for some reason. Okay. Wait. Okay, this is quite funny, honestly.
I can continue this.
Yeah, you can continue this part.
When I'm done, you want me to give you your laptop to Cherry, right? Cherry.
Stop.
It's a perfect match. لا لا ما
طبعا ليش كريم كان يا
يلا ضم كريم You're all Windows people, you're used to dealing with scratch. Hey dude. Just, I want to tell you what happened before. We talked about particle systems. Basically, particle systems are a bunch of images, sprites, they're called, that go in a mathematical path. They use modifiers such as, the lifetime, and it spawns in a sphere, and you set its initial size, and you change the size over the lifetime, and stuff like that. But here, you can see that the size is constant over the lifetime. Okay? You can see the color changes over the lifetime, stuff like that. So I'll try one day. Maybe my grandkids will do it, but put up the tutorials. Anyway, so now we're going to be dealing with creating the environment. No, I'm just thinking of what to say. We're going to try create an environment, okay? So now I'm going to try and delete everything that exists below. You want to try follow along? Dude, does UE4 even work on your laptop? I remember last time it was stuck at 45%.
That worked last night.
Huh?
It worked last night.
It was stuck at 45% for like half the session. Huh?
We were both using it last time.
Anyway, so first step, delete everything. Everything. We're starting from scratch.
Even the floor?
Especially the floor. Who needs a floor? The text, all that stuff.
You can scale it and you can use it in
Like Moses who can walk the ocean.
It's not the skybox and stuff like that. This is the actual geometry. Remember that you can access it easier on the side here.
MashaAllah.
Oh, I think Jesus, I just using the rhythm almost over
How do you select everything?
sing, wash.
يدوس على التمرين اليوم شو جاهز بالنسبة لي
Why don't you do everything in this?
because we don't want to do it. We just want to do the job.
So what is that?
As you can see here, there's the lights, the sky, stuff like that. Okay, so now the plan is to work on terrain. Okay. Hold on, let me get one.
مش عارف بس هو مفيش نمبرز هو الثلاث الثانية
هو مش عارف.
لا لا مش اوكي كله كده
انا اصلا خلاص ده قلت تحت.
اوكي وبعد جو اوف لاين
اوكي. بس يمين سنة.
Okay, so sorry?
Not a lot of people are
I hope a lot of people come today. It's like the first non-programming thing in the world. And the non-programming things pretty light. Anyway, so the concept of terrain is that you have like a grid, okay? All throughout the level, okay? That's built out of triangles.
triangles.
Yes. Okay? Now, because they're triangles, basically you can put the vertices of a triangle in any position and it's still a triangle, right? But like a square, I mean, if you have a square like this, like this, like this, like this, it's no longer really kind of weird, okay? So triangles work in every shape. Anyway, so the point is that they go up and down and stuff like that to make it look like an actual level. Okay? Then grass is added on top, and as well as trees. Okay? You can see on quite artists. Hold on, let me do my flashlight. So what we want to do now is create.
So Zenia, does like if I'm creating a building, does that is that involved in the terrain?
If you're creating what?
A building.
You don't need terrain. Terrain is anything that's like natural.
Natural.
Okay,
So like if
trying
it's a
to create
mountain, if it's
dirt, stuff
an
like
ocean or anything.
that. Well, oceans. I mean, if you see the bottom of the ocean, yeah, you would use what's it called?
Oh, you
terrain.
mean like ساعتها يبقى
It's land.
weight of the okay.
Okay. On top of that, we just have water. So, are you guys ready to follow along? What are you even doing? First off, you want to delete anything? Okay, I wasn't trying to delete anything. It's gonna look weird in the rest of it. That's the one Dude, it's a third person thing, why do you care? Just tell me this one thing. Engine scalability settings.
ورشة بني البيت عن
There is the
عن
energy. Anyway, so I'm going to start. If you want to continue replacing your stuff, you can. Is your thing almost loaded?
Yeah, I think.
Okay. So if you want to create terrain, first step is to click on the mountains over here, aka the landscape task. Okay? Then you'll be able to see your grid. Okay?
The landscape.
Sorry?
Press landscape.
Yeah. Okay, once you do that, you'll see a grid. These grids represent the boxes that you saw.
Triangles.
Huh?
These are squares.
Yeah, but in implementation they actually are triangles.
Oh.
And they're just squares because I guess it's easier to think about. Anyway, then you can mess with your settings. You can change where the landscape is located, its rotation, scale, stuff like that. Number of components. Okay? But we're just trying to make it work for now. If we press create, it will be done. Okay? Now you'll be able to see this huge thing. It's massive. Okay? Now we want to create a kind of mountainous landscape for our characters to live in. Okay? So the first step is to actually create the mountains. Press create at the bottom. Okay. Now we want to create the actual mountains and stuff. So how do we do that? Were you guys here for the modeling session?
Yes.
Which one? The 3ds Max session.
Oh,
Okay. Basically, we want to try and create some geometry. And we're going to do it by a method called sculpting, which is kind of like painting. Okay? So
That's
here,
called what?
it's called sculpting.
Sculpting.
So it's kind of like painting. Here, I don't know if you guys can notice, but this is like a mountain. Okay? I just draw on it and it goes up. Okay?
It's kind of reminds me of Sims.
Kind of, yeah. Anyway, so we want our mountains to actually be big and not just hills. So we're going to have to increase our size. So what are we going to do? We're going to increase the brush size. Okay? All the way to maximum. Okay? Now, when you're creating, you have to be really careful with what you're doing because you want it to remain in proportion to the player. Like a mountain might seem a mountain from one angle, but it might seem like a hill when you're actually in game. Okay? So we want this to be pretty big. Sorry. So let's start building this up. So as you can see, as we're sculpting, it keeps getting higher as we build upon it. Okay? This allows, if you do it by bursts, not like continue clicking everywhere. It's going to seem a bit more natural. But as you can see from here, this isn't very natural. This is a very sharp slope. Okay? So what we want to do is we want to smooth it, right? Guys, we want to smooth this. So if you click on the sculpt tool, you'll see the smoothing option. Okay? And as you drag, it might not be very noticeable. So you can increase the tool strength over down here. Okay? Maximum. And then you can see it's smoothing a lot more. Okay? This is still kind of slow.
كريم انا عندي لاندسكيب بيحكي
What?
لاندسكيب بيحكي
Sculpting, I use the maximum strength.
No, don't use maximum strength in sculpt.
No, and in smoothing.
Yeah.
What that?
Yeah, but you're not smoothing. Click here, then click on smooth. What's the question? Sure. What do we do? See, you're still going. With a perpetual loading. In fact, you can start going it before moving first.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's like having that.
Anyway, so now you can see it's kind of more smooth. Let's see how it's like, not the part. This is what it looks like in game. Okay? It's not very realistic, but it'll do that. Okay? So let's keep doing the rest of the landscape. Okay? I wanted to create, automatically collision works. You don't have to worry about it. Like, you're not gonna fly through the mountains. AKA the Bethesda problem. But I don't want, I do want to have like a kind of, what's the word? I want it to be like on a cliff, okay? So I'm going to start moving this down so that there's a valley down here, okay? So I'm going to go back to sculpt, and this time, no, not that. I'm going to press shift and click, okay? Shifting and clicking will decrease, it will go down instead of up, okay?
Now we're at the end result.
Yes. Keep in mind that you should ideally have a skybox or something like that. Okay?
A skybox.
A skybox.
Like that.
We didn't explain skybox. Okay. Look around, what do you see?
Sky.
Sky. Okay. Well, actually in Unreal it's called the sky sphere because it's actually a sphere. But in the olden days, excuse me, guys, there used to be a box, okay? In the middle of this box, there was the player. Wherever the player moved, the box followed around. So, if you unwrap the sky and you put it as the texture of this box, the sky texture would be like this. Okay? It would become the sky, and because it would follow you, it doesn't look weird. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of work going into creating the texture for the sky. But when you're creating your own sky sphere textures, it should like blend into the landscape. Either that, or you should put props to hide it there. Okay. So anyway, I'm not assuming that the player is going to come near this. Okay. But let's make it look better either way. Let's go back into sculpt, and this time use smoothing. Okay. Now that we've created some ragged landscapes, I want to use full strength to try and smooth it out shortly. Okay.
يعني هو السكاي بوكس دلوقتي ده أكبر
Forget the skybox. Okay. So now we smooth it a bit, and we have like a path to go on. Okay. Finally, I'm going to try to create something over here, because when you're designing your level, you want the player to follow ideally a specific path. Okay. So let's try and make sure that the player can't go through here. You do that by creating landscape that is very you want to create landscape that's pretty steep. Okay. So as you paint, try to make sure it's steep but not too steep that it seems unnatural. Okay. There we go. Now we have another problem. There is a lot of stuff blocking what should be like a road or something. Okay? Now, how do we fix that? Luckily, we have the ramp tool. Okay? Now, the ramp tool allows us to flatten certain pieces of land. Okay? So if I click from here all the way over here, or here, just for smooth sake, and increase the width, and press add ramp. There we go. Now this entire piece of land is flat. Okay. So let's add another ramp. Okay. Let's move this over, or it's easier just to leave and come back. And put that like this. And if we press add RAM, we have more flat land. Okay? And
So we're kind of like modifying our hills,
our what?
our mountains.
Yeah. Okay. There we go. Now we need to smooth it to make sure that it doesn't look this weird. That is a technical term, by the way. Books. So if you smooth out the edges, it'll look kind of pretty like man dugged, but that dugged. Like someone changed the land a bit, but that's because probably in the middle of roads, well, they do change it shortly, not too much. Anyway, so the path is going to go up here. You won't be able to see any of this. Okay? If you're designing an open world game, you should be more careful. But for now, you won't be able to see that. Someone have a question?
Yeah.
Yeah. What is it? I don't know what it means. It's like
The
Chandler
Bing or something. I don't know. Has this old like that first in the report, so you can ask me. What's it called? Zoom out. Doing out. Because you have two landscapes on top of the demo and just one.
Should work better now. You gave up?
Yeah.
Just load one.
That's not this one.
Really, is it? Okay, that computer is already on. More stuff. Start offline and you go. Anyway, now we have a very, very rough mountain range. Okay? But mountains usually aren't that smooth. I mean, if we get pictures of mountains. There. Yeah, they're really not smooth. Okay? They have a lot of variety in them. So we want to try and accentuate that variety. So we're going to use the erosion tool. Okay? What the erosion tool does is it kind of decreases what you have, but with a high noise. And the hydro erosion tool does a similar thing, but it simulates it in a different way. Okay? The erosion is supposed to be wind erosion, and the other one is supposed to be hydro erosion, like from water and stuff. Okay? So if you drag, you should see it morph to become more mountains, mountain-like. Okay? So there. This is, if you look at an actual mountain, it'll look similar to this. Okay? And of course you can increase the strength and mess with the settings as much as you want. Okay? Now because it's hydro erosion, at the points between the high, the steep sides and the flat sides, it's going to accumulate. Okay? Erosion tool will affect things kind of differently. Okay? But it's still a type of erosion. There we go. Now, this does not look natural either. It looks like you have a bunch of circles, like the aliens showed up. So what we want to do is just smooth over it lightly so it looks better. Okay. Even this, just smooth over it a touch, not that much. Anyway, now that we've done that, I think it looks suitable. Not perfect, but suitable. Let's move on to actually giving it, like, we're looking at a bunch of gray squares. Terrain does not look like a bunch of gray squares. So let's try and add a material to it. Okay. So the first step is to actually create a material. So I'm going to create a material by right-clicking in the content browser and obviously pressing material. And for now, I'm just going to call it landscape. Okay. When I drag it onto here, this will now, it's now the landscape. It might not show anything, but it is. So let's do something to prove that, just to test. I'm going to create a constant. Can't believe it's already been half an hour. And so I'm going to use a random color. It's a very pretty landscape. And it's not working. Okay, never mind. If you click on your landscape in the what's this called? The world outliner on the right, guys. If you click on the landscape in the world outliner, you'll see the landscape materials. You do so many other things. You just drag it here, and there you go. And come on today. Ruined everything. There you go. You live in Candyland. Okay. Now, obviously, the land isn't pick. Obviously. I don't know if I have to say that or not. So we need to find the accurate textures. So let's just go and look for grass textures. Just, so we can work with something. Actually, I think Unreal has grass textures. Let's try sample. Texture sample. What? And then search for grass. Okay, I don't think you guys have this. We loaded the stuff from a different project. Okay, but just like, let's just find any seamless grass texture. Whatever, it doesn't matter. No, this is too big. This is fine, I guess. So just find the grass texture that you like and download it. If you're not down, why aren't you downloading the grass texture?
I'm not feeling very well. I'm following you.
They aren't downloading grass texture. Download grass textures. And if you need to add any flowers, you can add a rose. Get it? It's a Titanic joke. Yeah, don't get it. Look behind you. Or don't look behind you. Jeez, you're rude today. Anyway, so once you drag that into here, it'll import, and then you can change to whatever you import as grass texture scenes. Okay, so I'm going to load that. Now let's just apply and see everything change before our eyes.
يعني don't you have to scale it عشان تبان يعني when you look closer it will be in the same scale
Yes.
in person.
Like right now, if you look closely, this is not realistic in the slightest at all. Okay? There are a lot of effects that you can do to fix that. But for now, I'm going to try and give you guys something to work with. This is something I've worked on myself. And I'll give you the USB so you can copy it. Just copy grass and grass diff, grass flower. I think that's it. Copy grass text just in case. And then drag them into the project. I'll give you the guys the flash, and for anyone watching at home, I'll try to upload it to Google. Obviously, grass doesn't have a skeleton. Thank God, that would be so cool. Yeah, overwrite. Yeah, overwrite. Import again. There we go. Who wants some grass? You can smoke it for a while too. You want the grass or not?
Today in Ep7.0, whatever, I actually took this as a joke. I was thinking however we're going to make it into a job here. Don't want to take a gas. And, I was thinking about it.
So not the front door. And if you want the front door, something to get used to. Anyway, so those are the raw project files that I created specifically for this purpose. Now, if you look at grass, what you'll see is if I leave a wireframe and disable collision, yeah, you can't see that. But whatever. Here, you can see that it's a bunch of planes. Okay, that's because this is the best way to actually show graphs that we've come up with so far. Unless you're using huge amounts of processing power. Do you guys want? Are you forward? You don't want to forward. I spent all that effort trying to install some of those computers. Finish. At least comment this up. Anyway, so basically the idea is, because grass is so lush, you're not going to notice all of these tiny planes everywhere. Okay? Now I put them at a slanting angle, so when you look down, you don't just see like things coming out of the ground like that. Because they're at an angle, you can still see it. But if you look at some older games, when you look down at plants, you're going to see them like in a weird pattern. You know what I mean?
No, not a weird pattern. They were just two plus and that's it.
It looks like this, like a star, or an asterisk or something.
Like
okay?
It's just two.
And Minecraft
is so too.
Yeah, the basic humans do it like this. Because anyway, putting it at a slanting angle means that when you look at it from the top, you don't just see the top. Okay? And you also have to put it at a variety of angles so it looks more natural. But anyway, if I put this in the game, you're going to see this black stuff. Not to be racist, that's not racist at all. the grass does not have these black planes. It doesn't have any planes. So I'm going to create a material and call it grass. Grass is taken. I will call it grass texture. Grass texture is not taken. Anyway, so the first thing that I want to do is make it translucent and set the shading model to two-sided foliage. Okay, this is because Unreal has special shaders specifically for this, so it looks more realistic. So when I drag in my textures, both the normal and the what's it called, the diffuse. When you put them in, and you put it in base color, this in opacity, and this in normal. There we go. Why is this dark? Huh?
Why is there a star?
This is for flower. Okay, use mask. Okay, because the opacity is special for this kind of stuff. It talks about how the light blends from the back. So let's put in a constant in opacity and make it like 0.5. And then apply. Now we have to put this, first off, let's see how it looks here. So let's look for grass. Here we go. This is
changes color.
okay. I'll figure this out as we go along. Okay. I obviously have an issue here, but for now, let's just try to put the grass in the game. Okay. So to do that, we need to go into the foliage thing. Okay. And the first step is to create a new foliage type. And then you go towards where is it? Inspired content particles. Okay, you find wherever you saved it and you bring in the two assets that you load. Or you just drag it, it's faster. There we go. Now if you make sure that it's selected and you drag, you can see what should be grass. It's just compiling right now. Okay. Now this isn't very dense, so let's increase the density and draw some more.
This is the 80 watts.
And then you can increase the density here in the individual things. There.
So you know, like it should be a flower.
Okay. So as you can see, some of them have flowers and others are just plain grass.
هتزيك little flowers بتاعتهم تطلع horizontal مقارنة بالباقي.
What?
الفلاور اللي جاي من التتشر طلع horizontal مقارنة بالجاز.
Because this is not part of the texture. Okay, if I load grass flower, okay, the flower objects are different from everything else. Like this is just a plane. Okay, this is one plane.
انت اللي عملت grass.
Yeah, that's why it's so shitty. So the grass goes like this, okay? And to do the flower, I created it as the two intersecting boxes that hit so much. And then I added a box like this and pushed these up so that it kind of has like a bowl shape, like a flower bowl. So because this is translucent, you don't, and it's so thin, you don't notice. Okay? Like, right? It's hard to notice the problems with the flower unless you're up close. But one of the problems that we do have is the specular, the roughness. So let's just try this for now. Keep in mind, I haven't touched this graph. Grass is literally like half a semester or something. I'm wondering what's the problem. Anyway, let's move on. We'll figure out the problem with the grass a bit later. One thing that you notice is this grass is very stationary. We want the grass to sway, like actual grass. Let's make some space here. Just up. Where is it? Now you can check whether or not it casts a shadow here. Oh, right. Well positioned offsets. Okay. And then you can add the grass, simple grass ring. There. Well, it's a bit too fast. Let's split these up into two parameters. The intensity obviously talks about how intense the swaying is, so we want it to be something like that. There. Now that's a bit too loud. So let's change the weight and make this a bit higher, like 0.4. Whatever, let's check out how that looks. I forgot what the additional WPO was. Does anyone have any questions? There, see? Straight.
هو سويس
This is not
اللون
exactly
بتاعك
like-
ما بينهم وبين البنفسجي.
It looks like a wave.
Grass doesn't look like.
No, يعني في grass moves كده على حسب اللون.
I mean,
It looks like هو نفسه like
I mean,
Increase
that's-
the swaying degree and slow it down.
What?
Increase the swaying like range and slow it down.
This?
Density and weight.
بص هي it's good.
Too much?
Definitely.
شو اللي حصل دلوقتي؟
Made it like a 1,000.
أو طب خلي الويت يبقى 0.01 أو حاجة.
I mean, you can go into details of the values. I just forgot to bring the material with me. And then if you let it file, this dude set it to 1. But
انت فاهم قصدي؟
yeah. Then again, you're gonna have to play with the settings to get it exactly how you want. I'm just wondering why the hell it looks so weird. Oh, the subsurface color. Okay. And if you bring the subsurface color from here, it should look a lot better. Ideally. There we go. Hell yeah. The grass is moving way too much.
It's dancing.
When the rainbow is raining.
Get it? Because it's grass and it's raining.
There you go. And if you want the lighting to be more uniform in the building, so let's build it while we talk about some other stuff. We will go back to the example that we used in the beginning, because I still think that this is an extremely beautiful game.
It is. I'm so good. Oh, I'm smart.
What game? Huh?
Alright, 4.
Yeah, I finished it a long time ago. Anyway, some things that you can notice here is that this is not grass. Okay? And the base of here isn't grass either. A long time ago, they used to create the base of this grass mesh as a grass texture. But they stopped doing that a while ago because technically it's not grass, plus it looks weird when you look down. If you have modern enough graphics, if you look down, it should work fine. Now you can mess with your shaders so that at a distance it looks like grass and close up it's like this. And because the mesh has to fade away at some point. Okay? You can't possibly have so many grass meshes all over the level. I mean, it's really, really powerful, but not that powerful. Secondly, you can see the trees. Trees use some of the same properties as the grass. The bark doesn't, but the leaves do. I think in Unreal, there's no... I mean, you can add it as vegetation, or you can add it as an object. Like, you know, I mean, dragon props and stuff like that. Secondly, look at this guy who's running from that tiny animal. No, but seriously, even in the distance, you can see that it's kind of detailed because it's one of the what? 4x4. Even in the distance, you can see that there's some detail, but because it's foggy, it's hard to see, which is and it also helps in terms of the game. Okay. But here you can see that the trees start to become a little less realistic and farther away. Okay? These are called levels of detail. Levels of detail are necessary if you're going to create a well-performing game. Because if you... Okay, let's look at this.
This is an open world game, so technically المفروض انك تروح للجي دي تشوفهم زي اي
Yes. Okay.
I was playing Black Flag, and there's this like island which clearly like there's this large portion of the forest that is clearly not open world. Then you just can like sense that it's like trees and all, but clearly if you go like close enough, it won't be anything but close enough to us.
Okay. Well, there's two things. Either Ubisoft is a terrible developer, which it is, or they use levels of detail, which they probably didn't do well.
Assassin's Creed 2 was a masterpiece.
No, was funny Assassin's Creed game is nothing close to masterpiece. It's good.
Assassin's Creed 2 was great.
It's great.
It's not a masterpiece. Anyway, if you look at this bag, if you look at this bag, for example, okay? Now, if you create a mesh, okay, we're going to use your bag for example. I hope this will be good. Everyone will know what your bag looks like. The bag itself, if you look at it from close up, ideally it should look realistic, okay? Now, if you bring it like 1,000 miles away or whatever, I don't know, I'm exaggerating, let's say 200, 100 meters away, you don't need this much details. You don't need this. In fact, just making it a box will it'll seem the same to your eyes. Okay, if done properly. Unlike black flag. So that's what a level of detail is. When it's far away, it's very low poly. But as you
It
get
kind of depends on the game. I mean, like for instance, if you're watching the new NBA, you know, like the level of density, even though it's something like across the room, you're trying to make the player recognize it from before. Right?
yeah.
Like if it's a bag, you want them to know that it's a bag, and that's not. It's not
You're
like
not
a red
talking
ball.
about from across the room, you're talking about so far that you can't see the detail.
Oh.
Okay? Like the tree is back here. Okay? Even the characters, they're going to have different levels of detail. Okay? But again, that depends on your distance to the thing that you're looking at. Okay? That's why it's called the level of detail, because there are multiple of them. Okay? So if you go close to an enemy or a tree or whatever, it automatically increases in detail scale. Okay? Now, like I said before, you have to work on your skybox to make sure it blends correctly with your world. You have to make sure that the lighting mimics your world. Actually, let me do.
Done anything in lighting?
What?
You haven't done anything in lighting, anything in lights. Maybe.
I showed you how to put lights into the game, right? Besides that, all you have to do is, I don't know, like build it. Anyway, so there are a lot of techniques to working on the landscape material. Like for example, you might want your material to automatically become like a cliff if the texture is high enough. A lot of games do that. But then again, you might want to control that by yourself. So you do that by going, I'm not going to actually do it, I'm just going to show you how. But in Paint, what the hell, let's just do one, okay? It doesn't have any target here. How do you create target here? You know, you can ask me. It's not like there's so many people here that I can't answer.
He asked. I waited like 12 seconds before you didn't answer.
Well, because he's whispering.
I thought you were like invested.
No. I'm the master of multitasking. All computer scientists in the world.
Yeah, really no.
No.
Not all of them are like this, but that none of them are like this. Just think we're like this, and it's the most harmful delusion ever.
No, I'm working on my what's it called? Whatever I'm working on while I'm creating while I'm watching a TV series on the side.
You're doing what?
I'm
That's
following
just awful, man. How are you having any fun with what you're watching?
You
It's
probably
like
you probably
you
won't
just want to
remember when
spend
you
the
watch
time.
it. You
No.
just like remember it in abstract. Oh, this happened, but what actually happened, you don't know. I just have this theory that like multitasking is just like a delusion. Especially since like women,
Yeah, well, I think you're a delusion.
women believe that like they have multitasking and we don't. So that's why I went with that theory.
Well, our PCs have multitasking, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's complete.
Your computer.
And
So anyway, you create the blend layer so that here. No, not this. Here. So I created like two different layers that blend between each other. And I apply it. So that way I can like, literally paint in the different layers. Ideally, I don't remember if this is exactly how it is. Anyway, session was over. I'm just gonna
كده عمري ما جرب حاجة من الحاجات دي قبل.
Huh?
كده عمري ما جرب حاجة من الحاجات دي قبل.
Yeah. You don't like the combining shaders thing?
لا
ما هو كنت عايز ألعب.
بتاع الجهاز ده يعني حاجة هو مش ده بتاع دون
Yeah.
حاجاته فظيعة عندي أقل من نص ده وبالبطء ده هموت لو قعدت في الشارع كده.
Okay, this is totally weird.
أنت حطيت البتاع بتاعت البيرد أو حاجة؟
Whatever, just like for example, here you go. Okay, you can see that you can blend between two different textures. Okay, now you can blend it by well, the layer blending. Okay, or you can use different methods. Like for example. Sorry. Okay, so you can do it by way. No, okay, the point is you can add a value that is. You guys know what lerp is?
Alert.
Lerp, linear interpolation. Everyone knows.
What's word?
Lerp is short for linear.
That's it.
Basically, if you have a scale from 0 to 1, you set an arbitrary value of 0, let's say 235, and then scale at 255. Okay, so at the middle it will be at 245. It's basically like a ramp when you set the value from 0 to.
ما فاهم
You interpolate between two values, I don't know what to explain.
لا 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 مش فاهم ان هو ازاي خالص
Because it's the interpolation. So basically you can use like the slope of the geometry to define the blending between the two. So like one could be mountains and the other could be, for example, what's it called? Like grass. It's not by this, it's you use linear interpolation. So I'm putting the two functions into the lerp and into the base. And then, because it's half, because it's the alpha value at default is at 0.5, it's a perfect mix between the two. But you can do it by, for example, the position. Coordinates. Don't touch your coordinates, but that's, I don't know which one it is. Basically, you can put whatever formula you want into the lerp, and it gets you the mix between these.
هناك المدى اللي هناك ده صح؟ هناك المحور.
I didn't care. You guys have any questions about game development? I'm thinking about making this the last session. You guys, do you think that this should be the last session? You guys think that this should be the last session? Because no one comes in.
Do you want it to be the last session?
I mean, if you guys want it, fine. Like, at least schedule it some different time. This,
What times do you have in the morning?
literally any time of the day.
No, I think the problem isn't with the time.
Huh?
I don't think the problem is with the time.
No, my problem is with the time. I hate being on this. I don't know. I don't know, man. Look at the beautiful, beautiful grass. You can see if you go up close, the grass shows.
So this my level of what?
What?
So far,
Level of detail.
and how do you implement this one?
Hold on a second.